You would think the hardest part of losing someone is the funeral. The speeches, the flowers, the dirt hitting the coffin like quiet thunder. But that wasn't true for me. The hardest part came after the funeral, when the house went still, when everyone else returned to their normal lives, and I stood in my sister's empty living room, holding her son's backpack and her daughter's stuffed fox, wondering how a world could keep spinning when a piece of mine had just stopped forever. I have always believed that family isn't something you prove with words. It's something you prove with your arms when the world caves in. And that morning, when I opened my door and saw two children, my niece Emma, 12, clutching her little brother Tyler's hand, standing there with eyes swollen from days of crying, I knew my life had just changed in a way I would never fully be ready for. It wasn't dramatic. There were no violins, no speeches, just a quiet knock, a soft, trembling voice saying, "Uncle Mark, can we stay with you?" And me, standing there in my work boots and worn flannel, staring at the faces of two kids who had lost more in 1 week than most people do in a lifetime. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think about how unprepared I was, or how I barely kept my own life on track. I just knelt, pulled them both into my arms, and held on. People talk about love like it's fireworks or grand gestures. But sometimes love is just a simple sentence whispered into hair damp from tears. "Yes, sweetheart. You're home now." I didn't know then that 1 week later, a man with polished shoes and a suit worth more than my truck would knock on my same front door, carrying a past no one ever wanted to talk about. A man who once walked away from these kids as if they were strangers and somehow believed he still had the right to return and take them from me. Back then, I didn't know anything like that was coming. All I knew that first morning was this. My sister was gone. 2 children needed me, and I would burn my whole life down before I failed them. The kettle whistled behind me. Old aluminum, dinted at the side, the kind of thing you don't throw out because life already throws enough things away for you. I poured hot water into 2 cups and let tea bags float, steam curling up like quiet prayers. The kids sat at the kitchen table, Emma staring at nothing, Tyler clutching a baseball card like it was some kind of anchor holding him to the world. The house felt different with them in it. Not heavier, just changed. Like all the air had rearranged itself to make room for grief, for delicate things that could break if you breathed too loud. My sister used to say I was the steady one, the anchor. I never believed her until I heard my own heartbeat echo in that silence. "I made chamomile," I said softly, sliding the cups toward them. "Helps a little when things are heavy." Emma's fingers wrapped around the mug like she was afraid it'd disappear. Tyler didn't touch his. He just stared at the tea steam rising, as if it reminded him of something. Maybe the casserole dishes neighbors brought. Maybe the way time blurs when you're trying to understand why the world suddenly feels colder. "Do we have to leave Mom's house?" Tyler whispered. The question landed like a stone in my chest. "Not right now," I said. "We'll take it slow, one step at a time. You're safe here. You're staying with me as long as you need." His shoulders relaxed just enough to show the words mattered. They always do, with children, especially when promises are all they have left. Outside, the morning sun washed the street in that soft, golden way it does in small Texas towns. Peaceful, gentle, unaware that sometimes life doesn't match the weather. My truck sat in the driveway, dust on the rims, toolbox open from work the day before. I was due at the garage in an hour. But none of that mattered. I made 2 phone calls, one to the shop, telling them I'd be out for a while, and one to my mom, who answered with that voice mothers get when they already know bad news before you speak it. "Are they with you?" "Yeah." Silence. Soft breathing on the line. That quiet, ache only family grief knows. "You'll take care of them," she said eventually. It wasn't a question. It was faith, laid at my feet like responsibility wrapped in trust. "I will." I meant it. Every syllable. I turned back to the kids, their small world gathered on the kitchen table, a backpack, a stuffed fox, a pair of shoes too worn for kids who only just learned what forever looks like. And as I watched them, I didn't feel fear or doubt. I felt something quieter, stronger, the kind of resolve that feels like steel under ribs. People always think heroism looks like running into fires or lifting cars. Sometimes it looks like sweeping cereal off a table for a child who forgot how to eat from crying too much. Sometimes it looks like saying, "You're safe," even before you know how you'll make it true. A week later, I would stand at this same table, facing the man who abandoned them, A man who believed money could erase a decade of absence. A man with the same blood as these children, but none of the heart. But that moment wasn't here yet. For now, it was just tea, quiet breathing, sunlight on a worn wooden table, and the beginning of a promise I intended to keep, even if it meant losing everything else. If someone asked me back then what my life looked like before all this happened, I'd have said ordinary, and I meant it as a compliment. I lived in a quiet corner of northern Texas, in a single-story house with peeling white paint and a front porch that creaked like it had opinions. I worked at Donnelly's Auto, a small garage off Highway 42 that smelled like motor oil, sweat, and burnt coffee. 6 days a week, I fixed other people's engines and came home with hands too stained for soap to completely clean. I didn't mind it. Honest work never scared me. My life used to be simple. Mornings with strong coffee, evenings with the hum of a radio and a half-finished wood project in the shed. I never had kids of my own. Life just didn't go that way. My sister, Lila, used to joke that I was born 40. Always steady, always too serious for my own good. She was the opposite, laughter in human form. She'd walk into a room and fill it, like she was made of sunlight. And now she was gone. That first week after the funeral, I kept expecting to hear her voice in my head, that mix of sarcasm and tenderness. But all I heard was the refrigerator's quiet buzz and the sound of 2 kids trying to make sense of a world that didn't have their mother anymore. I made rules, the kind that kept things predictable. Breakfast at 7. Homework after dinner. No screens at the table. I wasn't trying to control them. I was trying to build something that resembled safety. Grief breaks structure, and kids need structure more than anyone. Emma was quiet. Too quiet. She carried herself like someone afraid to take up space. Polite, careful, eyes always scanning before she spoke. She had Lila's dark hair and that same stubborn chin, the one that used to stick out whenever my sister wanted to prove me wrong. Tyler, on the other hand, was all chaos wrapped in curiosity. He followed me everywhere, into the garage, the backyard, even to the mailbox. He'd ask about everything. Why do cars have gears? Why does the dog next door bark only at night? Why do people die? That last one caught me off guard. We were sitting in the garage that afternoon, him cross-legged on an overturned bucket while I replaced the brake pads on a Ford. The air smelled of rust and brake dust. Why do people die, Uncle Mark? He asked. I tightened a bolt, pretending to think. Because life's got an expiration date, buddy. Everything does. Doesn't mean it's bad, just means we have to make the most of it while we're here. He nodded slowly, as if storing that answer somewhere deep. Mom said you were good at fixing things. Can you fix her? I froze. The wrench slipped a little in my hand. I wanted to say something comforting, something that would sound like wisdom. But all I could manage was honesty. I wish I could, Ty. I really do. He didn't say anything else. He just leaned his head against my arm, and I let him. Sometimes words only make grief louder. Evenings were the hardest. After dinner, I'd find Emma sitting by the window, sketchbook in her lap. She drew people, her mom, mostly. Sometimes me. Sometimes Tyler. Once, she drew the 3 of us standing in front of my truck, smiling. When she showed it to me, I saw she'd added a small heart near the corner of the paper, like she wanted to keep the family complete somehow. That's real good, I told her. You ever think about taking art classes? She shrugged. Mom said art was just another way to remember what you don't want to forget. I didn't know what to say to that. I just nodded and kept her company, both of us watching the sunset fade over the field behind my house. I was starting to think maybe, somehow, we were going to be okay. Then came the letter. It was Friday afternoon. The mail carrier left it in the box with the usual bills and ads. Plain white envelope. No return address. Inside, a short typed note and a business card. Mr. Mark Rivers. I believe we need to talk regarding Emma and Tyler. Daniel Holt. The name hit me like a cold wind. Daniel Holt. The kid's father. Lila's ex-husband. The man who walked out on them when Tyler was still in diapers and never looked back. I hadn't heard his name in 10 years, not since that night Lila showed up on my doorstep with 2 suitcases and tears she tried to hide. He was already wealthy back then, oil investments, real estate, whatever else men like him turned into empires. He had charm, I'll give him that. The kind of smile that made people forget the knife behind it. I thought he was gone for good. Apparently, I was wrong. That night, after I tucked the kids in, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at that note. The words were simple, but they burned. We need to talk. About what? about how he abandoned them, about how he missed their birthdays, their school plays, their first steps. I wanted to tear it up, but part of me knew I couldn't just ignore it. If he was back, he wanted something, and I had a bad feeling it wasn't forgiveness. The next day, I went to the garage early, trying to keep busy. It was one of those cloudless mornings when the heat starts rising before noon, and everything smells faintly of dust and asphalt. But I couldn't focus. Every time I turned a wrench, I saw Lila's face, and behind it his. By the time I got home, there was another envelope waiting on the porch, hand-delivered this time. A short message, written in neat, expensive ink. I'll be at your house Sunday at 3 p.m. I'd like to see my children. I looked at that line for a long time. My children. It wasn't the words themselves that made my jaw clench. It was the way men like Daniel use possession to hide guilt. I folded the letter, slid it into my pocket, and stared out across the yard where Emma was chasing Tyler with a paper airplane. They were laughing, really laughing, for the first time since Lila's funeral. And I knew right then, whatever this man thought he was walking back into, he was about to find out he didn't own a damn thing here. Not anymore. Sunday came slower than I wanted it to. The kind of day where the clock seems to mock you, ticking loud, dragging time through molasses. I spent the morning trying to act normal. Made pancakes, fixed a leaking faucet, even took the kids out to the farmer's market, pretending the world was still simple. But the truth was, my mind wasn't on produce or coffee. It was on a man I hadn't seen in 10 years. The man who had broken my sister's heart so badly she'd stopped believing in love. We got home just after 1. The kids ran off to feed the stray cat that liked to nap under my truck. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the clock above the fridge. The hands moved toward 3 like they were dragging chains. By 2:30, I couldn't sit still. I checked the porch, the living room, the front gate, like I was trying to prepare for something you can't prepare for. I even straightened the picture frames in the hallway, including one of Lila holding the kids at the county fair, sunburned and laughing. Her eyes looked straight into mine, like she was daring me to do right by them. At exactly 3 o'clock, I heard the sound, deep and foreign to this neighborhood. A black Mercedes gliding up my dirt driveway, too polished for this street. The dust behind it rose like ghosts. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stepped outside before he could knock. Daniel Holt looked exactly like I remembered. Maybe older, maybe a little more silver in the hair, but that same clean, expensive confidence. Tailored suit, polished shoes, a watch that probably cost more than my truck. He smiled the way rich men do when they're used to getting what they want. "Mark," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "It's been a long time." I didn't take it. Not long enough. His smile faltered for half a second. "You look good." I nodded toward the house. "You didn't come here to talk about me." He glanced at the window, where a curtain twitched. Emma and Tyler were watching from inside. His eyes softened. "They've grown," he murmured. "Kids do that when someone doesn't leave." He took a slow breath, like he was trying not to react. "I deserve that." "No, Daniel. You don't." We stood there for a moment, the silence thick between us. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of gasoline and cut grass. "Finally," he said, "I'm not here to argue. I just want to see them. Talk to them. Make amends." "Amends?" I repeated. "You missed 10 birthdays, Daniel. You missed the funeral." "I was overseas," he said quickly, as if that made it better. "Business obligations." I laughed, the kind of short, bitter laugh that doesn't reach the eyes. "You had 10 years of business obligations." He looked down at the ground, then back up at me. "Lila never told you the whole story, did she?" That made me pause. "She told me enough," I said carefully. He stepped closer, his voice low. "I didn't just walk out. She asked me to leave." "That's a lie." He held up his hands. "Believe what you want. I'm not here to dig up the past. I just want a chance to be part of their lives again." "Part of their lives?" I repeated. "You mean take them away from the only home they have left?" "I mean give them the life they deserve," he said evenly. "Good schools. Opportunities. Security. You're a mechanic, Mark. I'm offering them a future." I felt heat rise in my chest, the kind that isn't just anger, but insult. "They don't need your money. They need someone who shows up. Someone who makes breakfast and helps with homework and stays up when they have nightmares. You can't buy that." He studied me for a moment, calm, calculating. "You think love pays bills? You think it builds a college fund?" "I'm not trying to buy them, Mark. I'm trying to do what's right." "What's right?" I said quietly, would have been staying. For a long moment, he didn't respond. He just looked past me toward the window again, where Emma's small face peeked out from the curtain. His eyes softened, not enough to be real remorse, but enough to be convincing. "Please," he said finally. "Just an hour. Let me see them. Talk to them." I hesitated. The part of me that wanted to protect them screamed no. But another part, the one that still believed in fairness, in giving even broken people a chance, whispered that maybe, just maybe, he should at least face them. So I nodded. "Fine. But you do it here. In my house. And if I see even a flicker of distress on those kids' faces, it's over. You understand?" He nodded slowly. "That's fair." Inside, Emma sat rigid on the couch, her hands tight in her lap. Tyler clung to her side. When Daniel entered, the air changed, like the temperature dropped a few degrees. He smiled gently. "Hey, Em. Ty." They didn't answer. Tyler half hid behind his sister. Emma's voice, when it came, was small but sharp. "You left." Daniel's smile faltered. "I know, sweetheart. And I'm sorry. I made mistakes." "You missed Mom's funeral," she interrupted. Her tone was flat, steady, too old for 12. He swallowed hard. "I wanted to be there. I didn't find out until it was too late." "That's not true," she said. "Mom wrote you letters. I saw her send them." Silence filled the room, the kind that presses on your ribs. I stood by the doorway, arms crossed, watching his polished composure start to crack. Daniel sat down slowly, his voice lower now. "You're right. I didn't answer. I thought it was easier that way. But I was wrong. I want to fix that. I want to help you both. Give you what your mother wanted for you." Tyler peeked out. "Mom wanted you to come back." Daniel's face softened. "Yes, she did." Emma shook her head. "No, she didn't. She wanted you to want to come back. That's not the same." For a second, even I couldn't breathe. The room went still, just the sound of the clock ticking behind us, relentless and steady. Daniel looked at me, then back at her. "You're smart. Just like your mom." He stood, smoothing his jacket, and turned to me. "You've done well with them. I can see that. But this isn't over, Mark. I want to be part of their lives. Legally." "Legally." I repeated. "You're talking custody?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. He walked to the door, pausing before leaving. "You're a good man, Mark. But you can't give them what I can." I held his gaze. "You're right. I can't give them money. But I can give them peace. And I'll fight for that if I have to." The door closed behind him. The kids were silent. Emma leaned her head against my shoulder, whispering so quietly I barely heard it. "Don't let him take us." And right there, I made a promise, the kind that burns into your bones. "I won't," I said. "I swear it." The following days felt like living with a storm that never fully hit. The air was heavy, waiting. Even the kids could feel it. Every car that passed the house made Emma glance at the window. Every knock on the door made Tyler flinch. I tried to keep life normal, packed lunches, school drop-offs, the nightly routine of dinner and homework. But under every quiet moment was the question I couldn't shake. What's his next move? It didn't take long to find out. Wednesday afternoon, I came home from the garage to find a black SUV parked outside my house. Daniel wasn't alone this time. A woman in a gray suit stepped out with a briefcase, polished, professional, the kind of person used to being obeyed. Daniel stood by her side, calm as ever. "Mark," he said, like we were meeting for coffee. "This is my attorney, Ms. Ridley." I didn't shake her hand. "You brought a lawyer to my front yard?" She smiled politely, a rehearsed kind of smile. "Mr. Rivers, we're here to discuss a path forward regarding custody of Emma and Tyler." My stomach went cold. "Custody?" Daniel nodded. "I think it's time to formalize things. The kids deserve stability, and I can give them that." I took a slow breath, trying to steady my voice. "You mean you can buy that?" His tone didn't change. "I've been speaking with family services. They're aware that you haven't filed for guardianship yet. Technically, I'm still their legal parent." I felt the ground tilt a little beneath me. He was right. I hadn't filed yet. I'd been so focused on making sure the kids were okay, I hadn't touched the paperwork. Ms. Ridley handed me an envelope. "You'll find the documents inside. We'd prefer to avoid court, but if it comes to that, my client is prepared." I looked down at the thick manila folder in her hand, the neat legal weight of it. Then I looked at Daniel. He wasn't smug. He didn't have to be. His calmness said everything. He thought he'd already won. "You've got some nerve," I said quietly. "You vanished for a decade, and now you show up with lawyers?" "I'm doing what's best for them," Daniel said. You can't raise 2 kids alone. You barely make enough to cover your bills. Something in me snapped, not in anger, but in conviction. I stepped closer until I could see my reflection in his expensive sunglasses. You're right, Daniel. I don't have your money, but I've got something you'll never buy, their trust. And that's worth more than your entire bank account. He took off his glasses then, his voice lower. You think love's enough? Wait until they grow up and realize you kept them from the life they could have had. Before I could answer, the screen door opened behind me. Emma stood there, holding Tyler's hand. Her voice was steady but small. Mom said we already had everything we needed, as long as we had people who cared. Daniel froze. Tyler, brave in the way only 8-year-olds can be, added, You didn't come when Mom was sick. Why do you want us now? For a second, Daniel looked like he didn't know how to breathe. Ms. Ridley shifted awkwardly, pretending to check her watch. He finally said, Because I made a mistake, and I'm trying to fix it. Emma frowned. You can't fix 10 years. And with that, she turned and went back inside, pulling her brother with her. The front door clicked softly shut behind them. Daniel didn't move for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat. You think this is over? It's not. I'll see you in court. Do what you have to, I said. But if you want to be in their lives, you'd better start by earning it, not buying it. He left without another word, the SUV's tires kicking up dust all the way down the road. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of black coffee, papers spread across the table, guardianship forms, school records, Lila's will. She hadn't left much, but she had written one thing that mattered. In her handwriting, barely legible near the bottom of the page. If anything happens to me, Mark takes care of them. He's the only one I trust. I traced those words with my finger like they were scripture. The next morning, I called a lawyer, not one with marble floors or fancy coffee machines, but a local guy named Ben Carter who'd helped half the town with property disputes and custody issues. He met me at his office that afternoon, wood-paneled walls, a fan that squeaked, the smell of old books. He read through the documents Daniel's attorney had sent and nodded slowly. He's got money, but that doesn't mean he'll win. The kids' voices matter, especially Emma's. She's old enough for the court to hear her preference. So what do? File immediately, Ben said. Temporary guardianship, then full custody. Don't wait another day. And document everything, every visit, every conversation. I nodded. I'll do it. As I was leaving, he stopped me. Mark, one more thing. Don't let him get under your skin. Men like him count on people like you losing your temper. Don't give him that satisfaction. I smiled faintly. I don't plan to. That night, after the kids went to bed, I stood by the window, looking out over the dark yard. The porch light buzzed faintly, drawing moths. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew, low and lonely. And I thought about Lila. About how hard she'd fought for those kids when Daniel walked out. About how many nights she'd stayed up working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. She never asked for help. She never complained. She just loved them, fiercely, endlessly. I wasn't about to let all that love be replaced by a courtroom signature. I was raised to believe that being a man isn't about what you own. It's about what you protect. And those 2 kids were now under my protection. I picked up the guardianship forms and started filling them out, 1 page at a time, careful, deliberate. By the time I finished, the first light of dawn was creeping over the horizon, painting the fields gold. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt something steady inside me again. Not hope, exactly, something stronger. Purpose. Daniel Holt might have had power, but I had reason. And reason, when it's born from love, can move mountains. The courthouse in Denon wasn't much to look at. Beige walls, flickering lights, and the faint smell of old paper and coffee that had been reheated one too many times. Still, that's where I found myself 2 weeks later, holding a folder full of documents that could decide the future of 2 kids who had already lost too much. Emma and Tyler stayed home with my mom. I didn't want them near any of this. Kids shouldn't have to watch adults argue about who loves them more. My lawyer, Ben Carter, met me on the steps. He was calm, the kind of man whose confidence came not from arrogance, but from knowing how to keep a storm steady. Ready, he asked. As I'll ever be. Inside, Daniel and his attorney were already waiting. Same tailored suit, same calm expression. He greeted me with a nod that felt more like a power move than courtesy. Mr. Rivers, his lawyer began once we sat down. Our position is simple. Mr. Holt regrets his past absence, but he is fully capable, financially and emotionally, of providing the children with the life their mother would have wanted. I stayed quiet, letting Ben speak. Your client abandoned his family for 10 years, he said firmly. He missed their birthdays, their graduations, and his ex-wife's funeral. Meanwhile, my client has provided for them since day one. That speaks louder than any checkbook. Daniel leaned forward. Mark, you're doing great things for them. I won't deny that. But this isn't about punishing me. It's about what's best for them long-term. Stability, education, a future. I finally spoke. You talk about stability like it's something you can buy. You can't replace the nights she sat up crying, wondering why you left. You can't replace 10 years of silence. His eyes flickered, but he didn't break. You think you're the only one who's suffered? I've lived with regret every day since the divorce. I made mistakes, but I'm trying to make things right. Ben placed a hand on my arm, subtle, grounding. We'll let the court decide what right looks like. The hearing didn't finish that day. The judge scheduled follow-ups, background checks, home visits. Bureaucracy in slow motion. But one thing was clear. This wasn't going away quietly. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat outside on the porch. The Texas night stretched wide, full of crickets and distant highway hum. I stared at the stars, the same sky Lila used to love. She once told me stars were just reminders that even the darkest nights still have light hiding in them. I wanted to believe that. I needed to. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and questions from caseworkers. Polite people who meant well, but didn't understand that love doesn't always come with receipts. They asked about income, stability, support networks. I told them the truth. I didn't have much, but everything I had went into those kids. Emma tried to stay strong, but I could see the cracks forming. She'd been waking up earlier, sketching before school. When I asked why, she said it helped her keep things inside from breaking. Tyler had started sleeping with the lights on again. One evening, I walked into the living room and found Emma writing something on lined paper. She folded it quickly when she saw me. What's that? I asked. She hesitated, then handed it over. It was a letter, addressed to the judge. Dear Judge, I know I'm not a grown-up, but I know who takes care of us. Uncle Mark doesn't have fancy things, but he always listens. He makes pancakes when I'm sad, and he helps Tyler with his nightmares. Mom said a real dad is someone who stays. Please let us stay. I had to blink a few times before I could hand it back. You write like your mom, I said quietly. She gave a small smile. That's what Grandma said too. I sent a copy of that letter to Ben the next morning. He didn't say much when he read it, just nodded and muttered, "That'll help." The next hearing was scheduled for the following week. That morning, as I loaded the kids into the truck, I saw Daniel's car parked across the street. He stepped out, not dressed for court, just jeans and a sweater, hands in his pockets. Can we talk? He asked. I crossed my arms. About what? He looked tired. I didn't expect them to hate me this much. They don't hate you, I said. They just remember who was there when you weren't. He nodded slowly, eyes on the ground. You're a good man, Mark. I didn't think I'd say that one day. Don't say it to me, I said. Say it to them. He glanced toward the truck where Tyler was watching us through the window. I'm trying. I really am. Then keep trying, I said. But not through a lawyer. Through time. He looked at me then, something raw in his eyes. A man realizing money couldn't fix what absence had broken. I'm not giving up, he said finally. I wouldn't respect you if you did, I replied. He gave a faint, almost sad smile. You sound like her. I learned from her. The judge ruled that day for temporary joint custody, pending a final hearing. Daniel would get supervised visits twice a week. It wasn't perfect, but it gave me time. The first visit was awkward. He showed up with expensive toys and clothes still in the packaging. The kids barely touched them. But he didn't leave early. He sat on the porch with them, trying, failing, trying again. And for the first time, I saw something different in him. Not arrogance, not entitlement. Just a man trying to rebuild what he'd once burned. That didn't make me trust him. But it made me wonder if maybe, for their sake, I could learn to let him try. Because sometimes, the hardest part of love isn't protecting someone. It's learning when to stop fighting and start forgiving. Word travels fast in small towns. By the end of that week, everyone from the lady at the diner to the guy who pumped gas at the corner store knew Daniel Holt, the millionaire from Dallas, was back in town, trying to take his kids. At first, I ignored the talk. People mean well, but gossip has a way of turning pain into entertainment. Still, Every place I went, I could feel eyes on me. Some were sympathetic, others curious. A few, the kind who believe money equals worth, whispered that maybe the kids would be better off with him. But then something unexpected happened. On Saturday morning, I walked into Donnelly's auto to find half the crew standing around the radio. They all turned as I came in. My foreman, a tough old man named Rick, gave me that half-gruff, half-fatherly look. "You see this?" he said, nodding toward the small TV on the shelf. The local news had picked up the story. Prominent businessman Daniel Holt seen attending custody hearing for children of late ex-wife. There was a clip, him walking up courthouse steps, surrounded by cameras. The headline below read, "From Neglect to Redemption?" I froze. The reporter's voice said, "Mr. Holt has expressed regret for abandoning his family years earlier, stating he wants to make amends by giving the children a better future." Better future. The same phrase he'd used with me. Rick turned off the TV and muttered, "Hell of a spin job." Yeah, hell of a spin job. That night, I found the article online. It painted him like some misunderstood hero, a man haunted by his past, ready to rewrite it. It even mentioned a kind-hearted uncle currently caring for the children, like I was just a footnote in his redemption arc. My hands shook as I read it. Not from anger, but from the quiet kind of fury that comes when someone steals your truth and turns it into a headline. I wasn't angry that people thought he was trying to change. I was angry that the story left out the kids, their voices, their fear, their right to choose. Emma saw it too. I found her sitting on the couch, the article pulled up on her tablet. She didn't cry. She didn't even look surprised. "Is it true?" she asked softly. "What part?" "That he wants to make things right." I sat beside her. "Maybe he does. But that doesn't erase what came before." She nodded slowly. People like stories with happy endings, even if they're not real. That hit harder than anything she'd said yet. Because she wasn't wrong. The next day, something shifted. My phone buzzed nonstop, messages from neighbors, old classmates, even one from my pastor. They all said the same thing. "Saw the news. You're doing the right thing, Mark. Keep going." It turned out, the town hadn't bought into Daniel's version after all. They remembered Lila. They remembered the years she'd struggled, the times I'd brought the kids to church in her place, the bake sales, the school fundraisers. They remembered who had been there and who hadn't. One afternoon, as I was fixing a customer's truck, a car pulled up outside the garage. It was Daniel. He got out, wearing jeans again, no cameras this time. Just him. He waited until I finished tightening the bolts before speaking. "You saw the story." "I did. I didn't plan it," he said quickly. "The press caught wind of the court filing. My PR team thought it would help my reputation, but you didn't stop them." He sighed. "You think I like this? I wanted this to be private." I wiped my hands with a rag and looked at him. "Everything's a transaction to you, Daniel. Even your guilt." He didn't fight back. Just looked tired. "You ever make a mistake so big you start to believe you'll never make it right?" I didn't answer. Because yeah, I had. But mine hadn't cost anyone their childhood. He shoved his hands in his pockets. "I'm trying to earn their forgiveness, Mark. But I can't do that if you treat me like the enemy." I studied him. Really studied him. There was no smugness now. Just a man trying to find footing on ground he'd scorched himself. "Then stop acting like one," I said. "Show up. Quietly. No lawyers. No headlines. Just show up." He nodded once. "All right." And for the first time, I believed he meant it. That Sunday, he came by without notice. No gifts, no cameras. Just brought pizza and sat in the backyard while the kids played catch. He didn't push conversation. He didn't try to fix what couldn't be fixed in one day. He just stayed. I watched from the porch, arms crossed, unsure whether to trust him. But when I saw Emma actually hand him the baseball glove, I knew something small had changed. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the start of something that could eventually become it. Later that night, after he left, Emma came into the kitchen. "He didn't talk about money," she said. "No, he didn't. He said Mom used to sing when she made breakfast." "Yeah," I said quietly. "She did." She looked up at me. "Do you think people can really change?" I poured her a glass of milk and said, "I think some people try their whole lives to prove they can." She nodded, thoughtful, and went to bed. Outside, the night was still again. The house felt different. Not heavy anymore, just honest. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. There's a kind of peace that doesn't arrive with trumpets or fireworks. It comes like daylight sneaking under a curtain, quiet, steady, and impossible to argue with once it's there. It started showing up in small places. Daniel stopped dressing like a boardroom when he came by. Baseball cap instead of cufflinks. He learned how Tyler liked his pepperoni slices cut in half, and he didn't complain when the kid forgot his expensive glove and used my old, cracked one instead. With Emma, he learned to ask about her sketches without prying. He stopped saying, "I'm proud of you," like a headline, and started saying it like he meant it, soft and plain. None of it erased the past. Nothing could. But it began to prove something I never thought I'd see in him: stamina. Not for business. For presence. On a Tuesday evening, a storm rolled in, dark belly clouds, wind pressing leaves flat, that metallic smell that tells you lightning is close. The kids were on the porch with me, counting seconds between flash and rumble, when Emma asked a question I didn't see coming. "Uncle Mark, if we forgive him, does that mean we forget Mom?" I set my mug down. "No, baby. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering without the poison." She sat with that. Tyler leaned against my side, hair smelling like rain and grass. The next hearing landed 2 weeks later. No TV trucks. No cameras. Just the four of us in a hallway that hummed with fluorescent lights. Daniel stood a few feet away, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. He'd brought no entourage. Only himself. Ben, my attorney, whispered, "Judge wants to see if a shared plan is possible." I looked at Daniel. He looked back, something clear and human in his face. Not the kind of vulnerability you perform, the kind that shows up when you're simply tired of being someone else. "Let's talk," I said. We found a side room and sat across from each other at a rattly table designed to wobble your patience. No lawyers. No paper. Just words. "I'll start," he said. "I don't want to take them from you. I know I can't. I didn't understand that before. I do now." I watched him, said nothing. "I want to be in their lives," he continued. "Not as a headline. Not as a savior. As their father who's late to the job and willing to earn the right to keep showing up." "Earning means you'll get told no sometimes," I said. He nodded. "I'll take no, as long as I still get a chance to come back tomorrow." We worked out a shape. Not perfection, shape. Weeknight dinners twice a month. Saturday afternoons, alternating. School events as invited. Summer plans to be discussed together, in writing, 90 days ahead. No surprise trips. No guilt gifts. No undermining. And a line we both repeated until it felt like a beam we could hang the whole house on. What Emma and Tyler need first is peace. The judge liked the framework. So did the caseworker. Ben squeezed my shoulder as the gavel came down. "You did this the hard way," he said. Which is how hard things stay done. There was no celebration that night. Just spaghetti in my kitchen, garlic bread a little too crisp, Tyler telling a joke he couldn't get through without laughing halfway, and Emma passing around a sketch she'd been working on. The four of us, standing on my porch, drawn in charcoal and patience. She'd captured something I hadn't noticed before. All our shoulders, angled just slightly toward each other, like four magnets finally agreeing on which way is north. In the weeks that followed, we learned the choreography of a blended truth. On Daniel's nights, he cooked at my place so the kids didn't have to switch kitchens. He messed up more than he got right. He undersalted. He burned the first batch of pancakes. He told a story about Lila that was more about him than about her, caught himself, and started over. When he left, he washed his dish by hand, even though the dishwasher stood open. Small penance. Right-sized. He brought up schools once. Fancy academies with glossy brochures. I listened. Then I slid him Emma's letter to the judge. He read it to the end, folded it carefully, said, "Local middle school is fine," and meant it. On a warm Saturday, we drove out to the old fairgrounds. The kids ran ahead between bleachers and dusty sunbeams, hunting for a rumor of a stray cat Emma had seen last fall. Daniel and I walked slower. The air carried that dry summer smell, old hay and sun-baked fence posts. He spoke first. "I left because I thought success would make me worth something," he said, voice like gravel turned in a palm. "I kept chasing the next deal, believing I'd come back when it was enough. There's no enough. That's the trap." I let him talk. Not to absolve him. To let him lay down weight he'd been pretending not to carry. "I don't want your apology," I said finally. "I want your schedule." He nodded. "I'll send it by Sunday evening. Weeks in advance. No surprises." "Good." We watched Tyler sprint back, cheeks pink, triumph in his hands. The stray cat wasn't a cat at all, just a torn ribbon tangled in a fence. He held it up like treasure anyway. Emma snapped a picture. Daniel laughed, a real laugh, nothing curated about it. Healing didn't arrive in one scene. It arrived when Tyler forgot, on purpose, to check which nights were Dad's and which were Uncle Mark's, because both meant dinner, both meant stories, both meant someone steady to say lights out at 9. It arrived when Emma asked Daniel how to price her art at the church craft fair, and he said, "Ask your uncle. He knows this crowd better than I do." And I watched respect travel not downward from a man with money, but sideways between two men learning that love isn't a competition. One evening, just before school let out, we drove to Lila's grave. The four of us stood there with coffee and chocolate milk, the way she'd have liked it. Something serious, something sweet. I placed my palm on the warm stone. Daniel took off his cap. Emma set down a small drawing. Her mother in the kitchen, singing over a pan of eggs. Tyler tucked the ribbon beneath the vase like a secret flag. "I'll keep them safe," I said. "I'll keep showing up," Daniel added. The wind lifted, brushed the grass, turned the trees into a crowd whispering approval. Or maybe that was just what it felt like when a promise didn't echo anymore, when it finally found somewhere to land. Back home, the porch light flickered on by itself. The house looked the way it always had. Peeling paint, stubborn screen door, the good creak in the third step. But it held differently now. Not heavier. Just more honest about what it was. A place that could bend without breaking. Later that night, Emma left a sketch on my pillow. Just words this time, lettered in her careful hand. Family isn't who comes first. It's who doesn't leave. I sat with that a long while. The house finally quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't listen for footsteps on the driveway. When I turned out the light, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in months. I slept through the night. Some stories don't end with victory. They end with balance. The kind you fight for, page by page, until life finally lets you rest. When I look back now, I don't think about the courtrooms or the paperwork. I think about the nights I stood by that old kitchen table, holding 2 cups of chamomile tea, promising 2 broken kids that they were safe, even when I wasn't sure how to make it true. And somehow, they believed me long enough for it to become real. Lila used to say that love isn't measured in grand gestures. It's measured in consistency. At the time, I thought she was just talking about marriage. Turns out, she was talking about life. Because it wasn't one big act that saved those kids. Not the court case, not the confrontation, not even forgiveness. It was the small, quiet things. Pancakes on hard mornings. Stories before bed. Letting them see 2 grown men, once enemies, learn how to share space without turning it into a battlefield. Daniel and I still don't agree on everything. We probably never will. But I learned that sometimes doing right by someone doesn't mean winning against someone else. It means standing your ground without bitterness, so the people watching you, the next generation, know how peace actually looks. Every time I drive by the school and see Emma's art displayed in the hallway, or when Tyler waves from the baseball field before a game, I feel it. That quiet kind of pride that doesn't need applause. Just the knowledge that I kept my word. Family isn't about who has the right name on a document. It's about who shows up when it counts, and stays long enough to matter. So if you've ever been in a fight for something worth keeping, and the world told you you didn't have enough to win, remember this. You don't need to have everything. You just need to have heart. Would you have made the same choice I did? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine.